Hallo Freunde, willkommen zurück zu .NET API Review. Es ist 10 Uhr in Redmond on a day that starts with T, and that is how you seamlessly switch between German and English when your brain doesn't go forward far enough. Right. We have a lot of red. That's why we're meeting on a Thursday. I think today they're all networking, at least unless we go fast like we did on Tuesday, and then it'll be networking followed by grab bag like it was on Tuesday. So, yeah. With that, we're going to jump right in with apparently add multi-part slash related to media type names multi-part 9 or 5 4 4 6.
So this is not just multi-part related. This issue has been open earlier in the 9.0 release, and we use it to collect all the other requests by the users for adding new media type names. What it is, it's just convenient string constant to compare with the content type. So we collected those, and that's it. There's like no maintenance with them, so why not?
Alright, now that I've converted it from diff syntax to partial class syntax, seems fine to me. Anybody have any other feedback? I guess the casing on gzip, is that the way we've done it elsewhere?
I don't know from the top of my head. Give me a second.
I feel like gzip stream is capital G, capital Z.
Yes, it is.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, we should match that.
Yeah, agreed.
What is ND-JSON?
It's new line delimited JSON. It's used to stream multiple JSON objects within one stream. Basically, it says that new line means end of one JSON object, start of new JSON object.
How does that relate to JSON-L? Is it the same thing or different?
JSON what? Sorry?
L.
I don't know what it is.
Is ND-JSON an official thing?
Yes, official. There's a link to the spec I found. It's on GitHub. I don't remember right now.
Is the name controlled by IANA?
That's a good question.
I mean, there's a MIME type for it apparently, so. But I mean, it starts with X, which usually means it's custom, isn't it? Isn't X like the prefix for application defined?
Yeah, I think some of them go on to be officially registered, but actually no, IANA lists nothing that starts with an X. Well, that's not true. They list nothing that starts with X dash.
No.
Oh, nope, I'm wrong again. I can't read.
And I mean, why are we adding ND-JSON? Because somebody asked for it, or because we use
Yes.
it, or?
Somebody asked for it. But obviously we can cut it out. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's not like that critical. If we don't like it because it's not here in Yana, then don't add it.
That's certainly my inclination.
Okay.
I mean, it does seem like, you know, do we have any access today? Yeah, we do actually. Form URL encoded is X-WW.
Yeah, but that one's on the IANA list.
And that's also very, you know, commonly used, I guess. I mean, I guess my general like pet peeve would be like if it's something that is commonly used, I'm fine with that. If it's just some random person wanted a built-in thing, then I would be like, well, there's a reason why they're all strings, so you can just use it where you want.
Yep.
You don't have to have a MIME type for it. But we only have like 10 MIME types today, so I don't want to turn the or like 15 maybe. I want to turn this into like a a general like registry for everybody's favorite MIME types. And then event stream is the thing that Steven recently added support for, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense then. So then I would suggest you just change the caching of gzip and omit nd.json.
Agreed.
All right. At this rate, we're gonna get like 1 million done. Next.
The expose overload for load into buffer async.
All right. Issue 102659er.
Okay, so the customer is asking us if we could expose already existing but not public methods load into buffer async that take cancellation token. We have public load into buffer async without cancellation token, and the ones taking cancellation token are internal. And once again, this seemed like no-brainer. It's an async method. It should have had the cancellation token from the get-go, and it's already implemented, so why not? I asked the customer why they need it. They described their use case, and because we do not expect people to call into this method directly, but they are using, as far as I understand it, retry handler that did not handle well buffering the content or loading the content, so they had to call the load into buffer themselves, but because it does not have cancellation token, they did not have a way to pass in any timeout for this. So they, in some cases, got stuck waiting for it for eternity.
Yeah, I agree. It's a no-brainer. I mean, all the other methods on HTTP content already do overload on cancellation token. So my only, regret was that we can't make it optional, but effectively that's the pattern that is already existing on HTTP content anyway. So if we add those two methods, it will still look super consistent with what's already there.
Yeah, I mean, we could EB never the current too and add these as defaulted parameters, which would actually still call the current too. But
right.
I was gonna ask, do we?
Well,
care?
I mean, no, I mean the other ones. So if you look at HTTP content today, there are no optional cancellation tokens. They are all modeled overloads.
Okay.
So that's why bother. I'm surprised that none of them are virtual though. But I guess it is what it is.
Okay.
The support multiple HTTP3 connection.
All right. Issue 101.535.
So this one also short, and it's a precursor to the last one, and this one is exposing the Boolean property on socket handler that says enable multiple HTTP3 connections. We already have the same thing for HTTP2. The motivation for this was, well, first of all, opening multiple connections in HTTP2 and HTTP3 goes against the RFC specification. But in cases like gRPC service-to-service communication, because both HTTP2 and HTTP3 have stream limits, you can hit that limit very fast, and then you're limited by that, and that affects your throughput. So I think it was .NET 5 or 6 when we introduced the multiple HTTP2 connections to alleviate that. And now we would like to do the same thing for HTTP3.
Can I ask a dumb question? Because it's like, it seems like HTTP 1x existed for like 30 years or something. And then 2 was added like, I don't know, like 5 years ago. And now we're already adding 3. Is that just the state of the world now, that we just keep adding these things so fast?
I think that HTTP3 is 5 years old, maybe even older, and HTTP2 is going to be much older than you think.
Okay. So we're just behind the curve then? Because I thought we just added HTTP2. That's how it seems to me. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the property naming makes sense. I mean, it's the same as what we already have. So I assume you can turn them on and off independently. So you can turn on 2, turn off 3, and vice versa.
Yes. 9 years ago.
And 2 years ago.
That's the spec. That's the spec, not when. Stefan?
Oh, all I was going to say is, like, in Kestrel, there's .NET Core 2, where we added the first, like, HV2 support. So given that we're working on shipping 9, like 7-ish years that we've had support on the server.
Yeah. I mean, it is still much, much, much faster than the delta between 1.1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, while we're Wikipediaing, I think 1.1 was linked here somewhere.
Probably the first one, right? The first link. Well, it's just a generic protocol.
Yeah, we went like 33
Yeah,
years.
1991.
So 1997 to 2015. So we got almost 20 years out of HTTP 1.1, and then we got 7 out of HTTP 2.
Well,
I think in practice, HV2 is still very used, probably more than HV3.
Yeah. It's going to be there for a while with us.
Yeah, 1.1 was good enough for me as a teenager. It's good enough for me now.
I think it's still good enough for most people, just judging by numbers.
When I was young. All right. Yeah, seems fine. I assume the default is false.
Yes, obviously.
And are there any app compat things for it, or is it just we don't have any sort of app context switches for those, right? Do we?
We have app context switch to fully turn off HTTP 3.
And that one would take precedence over this one?
Yes, but obviously, if you don't have HTTP 3, you cannot have multiple connections of that if you don't have it.
Oh, sorry, this is just the multiple connections. That's not the HTTP3 support. Never mind.
Yeah.
So we don't have an HTTP3 on-off API. We only have an app context switch for that.
Yes, but you can control that by specifying HTTP version either on the request or on the HTTP client.
Gotcha.
Default, yeah, we default to HTTP 1.1 and we allow upgrades to HTTP2. And if the server announces that they support HTTP3, we will upgrade to HTTP3.
Got it. And it's only on the sockets handler. So like, is the expectation that people that want to customize the connection behavior, they have to manually create the socket handler then?
It only makes sense there because that's where the connection pooling is. Like, for instance, putting it on HTTP client handler doesn't make sense because underneath you can have browser handler or whatever, and like we don't own that implementation, we cannot affect that.
Gotcha.
All right, and apparently the contentious one. QUIC
Yeah.
support managing available streams on QUIC connections 101.534.
And this API proposal is basically what we need to introduce in SystemNet QUIC API surface to be able to support multiple HTTP3 connections. And now the details, nitty-gritty details. So what we would, well, maybe, I don't know if you want to also open the existing code and classes to get oriented. I don't know, it's up to you. But the first thing we would like to add is stream capacity available callback on QUIC connection options. Now, what it is, what it does, why. I'll step back a little bit and go back to the QUIC protocol itself, how it differs from HTTP2 and stream handling and stream count handling. In HTTP2, the stream counts and counting the streams and parallel streams is part of the application protocol. It's part of the HTTP2. So you can do it on that level. With QUIC, it's part of the QUIC protocol itself. So for us, it gets managed by the MS QUIC, which we are using underneath. So we do not have, at the moment, we do not have the knowledge right now of how many streams we can open on the connection. And if we run out of the streams, then we can once again open the streams on that connection. So this callback, stream capacity available callback, is basically something to tell us that the connection got the information from the peer that we can open additional streams on that connection. Okay, this is all confusing, so bombard me with questions.
I mean, if it's data from you to you, why do you need public API?
Because there's a difference between HTTP3 and QUIC. Those are different layers.
Okay.
QUIC is transport, HTTP3 is application.
Right, so, and they're in different assemblies?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, QUIC is basically logically like something like UDP and TCP, right?
Yes, yes. But
And
it
then
has
HTTP.
some of the, yeah, HTTP3 is on top of that. And like QUIC has some of the features of HTTP2 baked in it, like the multiplexing of streams. And well, in this case, that's what's interesting here. Also, another interesting difference is that with QUIC, we don't get the specification of concurrent stream count, but the protocol itself has ever increasing absolute count. It means that if you initially get like capacity 5, opening 5 streams and closing 5 streams does not give you right to open another stream. You have to wait for the other side to tell you you can open 10 streams, which means that right now you can open additional 5 streams because you've already wasted the first 5.
Why are you creating a public delegate type?
You mean like why aren't we using action or something like that?
Yeah, why isn't it action of quick connection and quick connection stream capacity available args?
I guess we have callbacks defined already in SystemNet QUIC.
I don't think so.
You don't, I think.
Yeah, I was just looking at the public API. Currently, there are no callbacks. I mean, at least in the root namespace. I'm not sure you have more than. No, you only have one namespace.
Oh no, we don't. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we don't have the. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I was wrong. You are right. We don't have that. We don't need that. We can use action.
We are using named callback types in other areas like SystemNet security, but I don't have really strong opinions if you want to change to generic type, then I guess it's going to work fine.
I think if some of those other areas, at least the ones that I have in mind, they take generic arguments like bool or things like that, which then having a name as part of a custom delegate can be useful for discoverability. But here, the type of the arguments, at least as far as I can see on the screen, is more information than the name of the argument provides. So you could just use action.
Yeah, the one that is a bit weird is the args type.
You can split it too. That's one of the alternative proposals, to use directly the arguments instead of like the values, the integers instead of the args struct. That's.
Well, I think you probably want to use some sort of structure or class as an argument so you can add more things later without having to create different delegates for that. Because now you would have to add more properties, like more callbacks, right? Which you don't want. You want to be able to pass more data into this thing and then have that just be picked up. So I think generally speaking, that's the right model. It's just the naming of it is a bit odd. And it's a bit weird that it's a mixture of fields and properties. So it should either be a property or a field, but probably a property.
You mean the read-only there?
Yeah, the read-only prefix, but like, but I think, yeah, I mean, also like usually we use classes, not structs, I guess, for those things, but it doesn't really matter. Like, is this a hot path that you get called a gazillion times, or?
Yeah, it can get.
I mean, if it's a hot path, then you don't want to use delegates at all. So.
There's no way around it because this comes asynchronously from MS QUIC. It's basically a reaction to a frame received over a network.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what else would you do, Jeremy? You would use a virtual method or what?
Oh, I was looking for the guidelines. I was looking specifically for this guideline. Oh, went up of do use func or action if you can, and then along the way there was avoid using callbacks and performance sensitive APIs. So.
Oh, maybe it depends on what we consider hot. In context of HTTP, this is one callback per request. So it's not like on every millisecond or something. It's
right. What's more like for the allocations, right? So if you allocate a class for the arguments, right, that would basically go towards your quota that would you allocate per request. So I can see why you wouldn't want to do that.
I think that the alternative would be have some wait object, right? Somebody can wait on, and then view properties. But again, this stuff gets tricky in multi-thread environments, so we try to avoid case where we are responsible for accounting. So the callback was probably the easiest to sort of consume. That's one motivation for a callback other than properties and waiter.
So in terms of naming, so we remove the delegate, we just make it an action. Are we still calling the property on connection options then callback? Is that what we usually do? Stefan, I think you guys have this pattern a lot more than what we do, because we normally use events with delegates, but you guys have a lot of properties that are just delegates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the funker action. Yeah, we lean into that. There are a few places where we use like strongly typed delegates where it gets out of hand, and we find ourselves wanting to name arguments. Basically, I'm like request delegate might be the main one, but like, yeah.
And what do you call the properties that stores it? Is it suffixed with callback?
Usually not. I'm sure you can find exceptions, but usually not. But in this case, I think it's fine since it's kind of next to a bunch of other options. Like one thing we do in like a lot of our auth options is we put all the callbacks under an events subproperty. If you think there's going to be like a bunch of callbacks, that might make sense. But I don't think that's necessary here.
Yeah, just look at there's other things in quick listener options that has a property called connection options callback. So I guess that's already the pattern that you guys have for QUIC. So probably naming it like that makes sense. Can we just remove the available args from the type name? Can we just call the QUIC connection stream capacity, or is that not enough?
Yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
noodling with some smaller names. Like, I think the connection can be dropped out of the word. Unless you disagree, in which case we can put it back, but...
Yeah, even arg seems weird as a suffix, but...
Yeah, well, because if it's for events, you're supposed to name your type event args and derive from the event args class, which is surely where that's coming from.
Guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. So then, yeah, I guess... Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we can go with args, info, leave off a suffix altogether. So, something like that. But that feels like it's missing the noun. Args is really the noun in that thing.
Well, increase is a noun, right?
I mean, it's definitely a verb. It might also be a noun. I have 3 increases. Yeah, no, that sounds wrong.
Oh, but don't you say things like the increase of money, blah, blah, blah? Not that I'm a native speaker, but...
Yeah. The increase of the money supply over the last 100, yeah. English is weird. Yeah, alright. So, maybe before we finish on the name of the type, count increment feels redundant to me. Like,
Yeah, because like
increment implies it's related to a count. So if it was just like just deleting
Increment.
count out of both of these, I think is...
Yeah. Before we get to that, like there's another option that like right now this proposal and what we have in some draft implementation is using increments, but we don't have to use increments. We could use the total counts, actually. The number exactly as is reported from the frame that we receive on the network. Right now, this is like more convenient for us to consume, but we can go with the number that's basically by the spec.
So change it to something like that. So call it capacity limits and call it a stream limit.
And this is like a total limit. Like the key is that like this is not like the limit from now. It doesn't mean you can open that many more streams. It means this is the limit from the beginning. So
yeah, exactly.
Because this one was, I mean, based on the name, this represented +5 and this represents cap as 10.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what is the implementation supposed to do? Like, it looks like in the template code you provided, you basically plot equals account. So if you just give me the new total number, then how am I supposed to do with that? I mean, I can set it to that number, obviously, but what if that number is lower? Does it mean I have to kill a bunch of streams, or?
It never gets lower. That goes.
If it did, you could. Yeah, the underlying library would complain. Sorry. I actually was talking, just to throw out one more idea before we get too far, is like this could be like an interface or an abstract base class too, right? I don't know if we'd ever need that flexibility, but yeah.
Why do you want an interface for two numbers?
Because it seems like is there any. So how did we get around this before? Sorry, if you already explained this. Like, obviously, like there's some HTTP client support for HTTP3 without this, right? But it's a necessary feature.
We never needed it before now because the stream counts and limits were handled by MSQuick, and we only had a single connection. So we would close open stream async, and that would wait until there is a capacity to open a stream or timeout. So basically, we didn't care about the limits or numbers or whatever.
Yeah, it was just potentially to, so there wouldn't be an explosion of callbacks if there's like more things that would need handling by the HTTP client. But I think this is fine. Sorry.
Skip. So it also means that basically normal users don't need it unless they do something weird like breaking the protocol.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
this
so
is like very advanced usage for the multiple connections. Like I personally cannot think of anyone who would need that.
Wait, so I thought you said MSQuick changed their behavior, right? Like before closed async would wait until you could open more streams, or is that how it still works?
What?
So sorry, would every client using quick connection options need this so they don't go over the stream limit, or?
By
or is there some
default,
other way?
By default, the open new stream will wait until there is capacity, so user can't really make the library go over this limit.
And you get around it. And you get around it by waiting on a task. So you spawn a task and you're waiting for completion.
Yeah. So the reason why we need this is to avoid getting blocked until the underlying connection has enough capacity, so we can check the capacity beforehand, and if we know there is no capacity, try another connection.
Okay. So any client that might want to use more than one connection dynamically might need this, but that itself is the rare use case.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that. I retract the suggestion about like an interface or something.
I see. So the value really here is in tracking the numbers yourself, so you can, before you enter the weight, you can basically see whether there is capacity, right?
What you would do, or what we do as our implementation, is that we basically track the number of already opened or the number of attempts to open stream per connection. So we know how many capacity we have remaining. Therefore, that's the checking, basically. And this will happen wherever the peer decides to give us new higher capacity. So in case we decided not to use that connection because it was already at the limit of the capacity, this event means, yeah, you can use this connection again and it can handle more requests.
Okay, Jeremy, can you explain what you just did?
I'm just projecting names and seeing what we think. Because if we name the type something like capacity limits, then like we can just call it bidirectional and unidirectional, or unidirectional, or we can leave limit on here in case later we want to expand it to say what the limit is and what the delta was of this operation. But
gotcha.
Because it'd just be like, I guess because if it's coming off the args, you just be like, args bidirectional. And you'd be like, all right, that maybe that's a little bit weird. But if it was coming through some other properties, and you were like, total equal food up limits, that bidirectional, then it would make more sense. But I guess you're not going through another type, so showing that this is a limit instead of a delta is probably goodness in the name. But yeah, so I think it sounds like QUIC stream capacity limits. And then we could just call it bidirectional limit and unidirectional limit. If we're going with absolutes.
I mean, I'll generally say, like, I think I prefer communicating totals over deltas, because deltas, if you miss anything, you're basically screwed, right? And you're permanently out of sync. Versus if you get total numbers, then well, if you miss one, well, too bad, but you get it sync eventually.
As I said, doesn't matter to us. Like, we can go with both.
Yeah. Because I mean, the problem with an event handler is, right, like if you subscribe, well, when do I subscribe, right? If I subscribe too late, then I miss the previous 4 increments, right? So then, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, sorry. I think we should also talk about this, because like this is part of QUIC connection options, which you provide when you open the connection before it gets constructed. So there's never a moment in time where this would be like called without you knowing. If you want to subscribe, you will always get all the callbacks. It also brings the weirdness that this callback will get called before you get the connection to your hand. But the
so
initial value.
So logically, like I assign it into the options, then I call the API that takes the options, and before that call returns, my callback is going to get called, right?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I mean, I would kind of expect that, to be honest, because, yeah.
I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I can see people struggling with that, right? Because if you have some sort of state afterwards that you depend on, then you might end up in a world where get a callback when you didn't expect it. But I mean, it kind of has to work this way, so it makes sense to me. And that means also there's no unsubscribe, right? Because you passed it in once and then it's going to get called forever, right? Yeah. Yeah, and so from that point of view, yeah, it probably doesn't matter whether you do deltas or totals, because, well, you can't really miss anything in that world.
I would put a small vote towards increments, so just having deltas instead of absolutes, because when from the side you're consuming, you're essentially always consuming. So you really only care about the delta of how much more you can now consume. And also from a thread safety perspective, you might have multiple of these callbacks being called at the same exact time, since they're coming asynchronously from the network, running on the thread pool and so on. So if you have the total numbers, you would also have to be aware that it's possible that you would get the higher one first and then the lower one, which doesn't really make sense. So you would still have to track the previous total yourself. So it's just more work.
Got it.
In practice, you're gonna have to lock anyway in this callback, right? But your suggestion is with increment. In theory, someone could do do an interlocked increment, whereas you have to lock to see if you got the higher limit on thread. I was gonna vote for total just because it's closer to the protocol, but I kind of see your point.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're trying to line things up with the protocol, then if the protocol says increase the limit to 20, you're looking for when did I increase it to 20, not when did I increase it by 1. But if you think that the delta makes more sense, given the interlocked max is not a intrinsic operation.
I think it's mostly just moving where the logic to handle that has to be. So if it's totals, then the consumer of this callback would need a little bit more logic to handle it. If it's increments, then whatever computed the increment or whatever computed the delta has to have that logic. So
fair enough. I mean, a naming problem is if it's absolute, then we can call it something like capacity limits. And if it's deltas, then we have to call it capacity changed args. But
I would argue it's ambiguous regardless if you don't have a good dot comment, because is the capacity limit the number of open connections relative to now or relative to the start of the connection? Again, the protocol spec makes that clear, but yeah.
I'm actually against having the limits or whatever, or increase in the name, because imagine that we decide to, apart from delta, also include the total. So now the name would not make sense. That's why we are designing it as a struct, so we can add more properties to it. So why limit the name of the struct to just one type of value? Wouldn't capacity be enough? Or, change the args.
Yeah, as an event, it would probably be capacity changed, and then we would call this capacity changed args, and whether we're telling you what it changed by or what it changed to, those both work with that name. Or both.
One thing I like about increment is if people were using this and they weren't familiar with the protocol, which would be, is that actually does seem less ambiguous, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's relative to now or relative to the beginning of the connection. It's the increment, so. And you can do interlock that.
Alright, so do we like the shape of just bidirectional and unidirectional increment?
Only thing that's weird is that one has streams in the name and the one does not.
Right, these are basically the two naming schemes. If we like this scheme, I'll delete streams, and if we don't like this, I'll put streams back.
So. It's on stream capacity limits. I am fine with removing streams.
And then we get to avoid the question of should it be singular or plural. Alright. So I propose capacity changed args is the name of this structure.
Should we call the callback stream capacity changed callback?
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Okay, yeah, no, that seems fine. as far as the name of the struct, but I feel like the name should kind of be considered in combination.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't hear anybody saying yes, but I also don't hear anybody saying no. So
I said yes. And,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this guy. So as an event, it'd be that.
I know that the QUIC listener options has a callback that ends in callback, if that changes anyone's opinion. But like, yeah, I don't feel super strongly that it needs to be there.
And the callback there comes from like being inspired by SSL authentication options, which also use callback in naming of their callbacks.
Oh, good point.
I've removed the read-only declaration on the properties because it's redundant with being on the struct. Yeah, so we can go with capacity changed as is. Sometimes people put the on, but according to FDG, on is the name that fires the event, not on is the name of the event itself. And this isn't an event, so we can call it callback if we want to distinguish that it's a callback instead of an event. But as an event, I think this would have been its name.
I think I prefer the one with callback because of prior art in this world. And I would probably remove the change from it, I guess. The stream capacity callback. Because it's kind of consistent with the other places where we just have connection options callback.
Assuming that there would not be any other notion of when the callback gets fired, or that there'd be multiple capacity kinds of callback, because the benefit of this pattern is our style says ed means after the change has made effect, so that by knowing that the callback is called changed, it's these limits are now active, as opposed to changing of we're proposing this and you can still change it.
Yeah.
The type doesn't let you change it, so.
I was about to say, like, if we ever do that, then, you could imagine we just say stream capacity or stream before capacity or something, right? I mean, but it seems fringe, so I don't think it will matter here. I think for general events, that's way more likely, but given that this is all very specialized code.
Alright, so we happy with what's on screen? Don't all shout at once.
Just a
I
typo.
did
The
an emoji.
type.
Thumbs up. Oh, there's a typo.
Yeah, I can't see the Teams chat, so if something needs to change, you need to speak up.
Oh yeah, it's still capacity available args. And yeah, that's it.
All right. I mean, I think literally every noun on here changed, so except this one, existing class. So We renamed everything. Going once. Going twice. Sold.
Yay.
Alright. By my counting, that ends the preset agenda.
Are there any other network connection ones we should talk about, even if they're non-blocking, while we have you here?
There was some we discussed with Radek about some enums for SSL stream. I don't know if he'll be ready to talk about it, but I think we have the right audience here.
Presumably expand all the enums.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been ready to punt it, but it's currently targeted for 9.0, so we just tell that it can slip if you need to. But if Radek is still here and if he's ready to talk about it, that'd be awesome. Radek?
I don't see him on the call anymore.
Okay, I'm in a flux. I'm moving and stuff, so I can't really present. So I think we'll need to shove it for future.
Yeah, that works. I mean, we have enough stuff to talk about. So if there's no network stuff, then we can just go back to whatever we want to talk about.
I did mark 2 more networking just since we're on a roll. The red now. The service point manager and the nullability on the string content one. Okay,
Oh, that'd
so
be fun.
yeah, this one already went through API review 2 years ago, and we said we'd get back to you in a week. So now it's been 2 years. Essentially, the outcome of the last meeting was that we have a bunch of properties on this type, and the question was, are we sure we want to obsolete the whole type versus just the majority of properties? So I double-checked everything on the type now, and the only uses of it are either HTTP web request, FTP web request, so things that are already obsolete, or SMTP client uses some of them. So the only uses of the 3 properties and at the top of the alternative are used by SMTP client, and the team consensus is essentially that we don't care since it's already sort of self-deprecated, as in we already discourage you from using it in the docs. So since that's the only usage of it, we would prefer to just obsolete the whole type, just to make it more clear to people that if they use this, it's probably not doing anything. And especially for things like security related, they're not actually being used by, for example, HTTP client, right? So it's for the few people who are actually using it with SMTP client and know that they're doing something, they can suppress the warning, and the majority who are using it by mistake, they can see the warning.
Does the type ever appear in a virtual member that someone's likely to override, or a callback that they have to provide?
No, so service point manager is actually, I don't know why the type wasn't static, but everything on it is static. So.
Okay. Because it is weird to call consts obsolete. Like it's a number. It's still a number.
Yeah, but they don't mean anything, right? They're not respected by anything anymore. So.
All right, because my usual objection to marking a type as obsolete is, again, if it appeared in a virtual method, somebody's going to have to override. Now they're going to get a warning. Don't talk about this type. It's like, well, I have no choice, and us doing more work of just putting obsolete on more things saves everyone else work from making their code look reasonable. So, but if it's just static, then I guess I don't care.
Yeah, everything on the type is static, and some of the methods on it were already obsolete. So notably the find service point, or whatever they're called, methods, they're already obsolete. So by proxy, essentially, the service point class is obsolete.
But you said
by way of
3 of them are actually still used, if I understand this comment correctly.
Yeah, so the top three members, they're still being referenced by something that isn't obsolete, which is SMTP client at this point. So we would still prefer to obsolete the type.
And is there a way of setting these things for SMTP client that isn't obsolete? Or is SMTP client itself obsolete?
It's not technically marked obsolete, but we discourage you from using it. Even in the docs, if you open it, the first thing is like, go use MailKit instead. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we decide to obsolete the class as well.
Fair enough.
I mean, but they're statics, right? So like the user will never see them. So even if the user uses SMTP, they don't get warnings from Service Port Manager, right? So
unless they want to change this option from false to true.
Sure. I mean, it depends on how you see this, right? If SMTP basically uses it for backward compatibility, then and we still think it's obsolete, then it still makes sense to me to say, yeah, if the customer wants to check it, they have to just suppress the warning, because we still tell them it's obsolete, right? So, from my point of view, like, yeah, if you're that convinced that Service Port Manager should be obsolete and the three members that are still here shouldn't be used by anyone either, then I think it makes sense to obsolete the entire type rather than just piecemealing, 98% of the properties.
Yeah, we do, and I think that even from the current behavior, like, it's not obvious that these things control SMTP client, at least to me. Unless you look at the implementation, there's nothing hinting at that. And the majority of people, I think, who are going to touch these properties are going to touch them thinking that they do something for HTTP client. So it's for the couple users that are actually doing it, like, quote unquote correctly, they can suppress it, we feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned, assuming that check krill is off by default, which I think it is because it was off by default in IE in 1997, that this means if you are using SMTP client and you say check krill true, when you rebuild with net9, it'll tell you, hey, by the way, this is obsolete. And you'll be like, oh, I guess it's not respected anymore. And you'll delete the line of code, and now you've actually changed your security posture. But if you think that no one's using SMTP client, then it doesn't really matter.
I mean, we know from usage the SMTP client is not like super high on the list. We have pointed people for multiple years to use something else like MailKit anyway. So I don't know. Like, it's not like. I mean, I think the fair question is, like, for those things, what's the replacement, right? Is the replacement delete the line of code or call another API, or, well, maybe you don't want to delete it, maybe you want to suppress it.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it's suppress it.
But I think, you will have you already have the web request diagnostic ID there, right? So I don't know what this is. Sorry, you could potentially have a URL on that points you to something reasonable, right? Which by default you have, right? Because it goes to
somewhere / diagnostic ID.
No, actually, there's no default, right? So you have to provide some sort of URL scheme there that includes the ID or not, depending on how you format it. But yeah, I think I'm okay with obsoleting the whole type.
what's your namespace here?
I think it's just systemnet. Thank you. Okay, this one should be simple. Essentially, this one is just we have constructors for string content that take media type arguments, and in practice, they're all nullable, and in the ref, they're not. So we just want to make them nullable to match reality, and that's it.
Just pulling up the type and double checking. Yep. That looks like it handles null just fine.
Yep, seems fine.
Thank you, and I think that's all for networking for now.
There's actually 2 more for networking that overlap with runtime that I'm tracking that might be good to review as well. 103.111. And the other one is 97940.
Alright, which one you want first?
Doesn't really matter. This one's probably fine.
Alright.
So this one, pretty simple. It's just implement IEquatable on URI. That way URI can participate in use cases that require IEquatable or that benefit from the type implementing IEquatable. And the community member listed some of the scenarios they'd like to use that with. Dictionaries benefit when you explicitly implement IEquatable. And there's various span and other APIs that can only work if you implement IEquatable. So it's really just fleshing it out since it's commonly used in such scenarios.
Seems fine to me. Chat asked if we need a not null if true, presumably on the returns for, or that equals can have something here which says it's a null guard on other.
Yeah, I think we can, since the implementation should never have this as null.
Cool. So what's a not null when attribute look like?
I think it's just not null when true.
So it goes on the parameter.
Yeah, it goes on the parameter.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
And then this one is that in .NET 8 we had shipped IUTF-8 span parsable. We had reviewed and approved that for most types that implemented IUTF-8 span formatable already. So all the primitive types, date, time, GUID, etc. IP address and IP network implement IUTF-8 span formatable. They were missed from that initial review. So just achieve parity here and get these types to implement UTF-8 parsing as well.
And that looks consistent with the pattern we use for the things that don't support iFormat providers. So, does that mean that IP address does support the iFormat provider?
It supports iSpan formatable, which takes the format provider. It may end up ignoring the provider if it doesn't want to use it.
No, I'm just saying here you did the explicit try parse taking the provider, but then the public one was masks it out, and that wasn't done up here. So, does it respect the provider, or should we use the same pattern?
It looks like it also should be masking it out. Yeah, because we're masking it out for iSpan parsable, so.
Alright, so parse of UTF-8 text, explicit parse with text in the provider, and then similar for the try parse. Sounds like we're happy on that one.
Yep. And there's a PR waiting for that one, so we can get it merged in for here pretty soon.
Well, don't forget to change that part.
Yep.
Alright, We still have 40 minutes to go, so.
If no one else has ones they want to look at, I've got some other small ones that should be pretty quick to
You just
get
marked
in.
the quick one, I think. It's another one. Make complete write changes.
Yeah, but I realized that Stefan Halter left, and
Ah,
yeah, because this will affect ASP.NET Core, so it would be better to have his opinion on that.
Yeah, I was going to point out we have lost some people, so we're probably only at easy issues right now.
all right. Then.
No, looks like Stefan appeared.
That's good.
Sorry, I was having internet issues. Are we wrapping up or something?
No, we need you.
All right, so we do want to talk about make complete writes async.
Okay. Yeah. So please excuse the lower quality here because I cooked it up while you were talking about the issues, and this is something we talked about within the team today, so it's pretty fresh. What's happening right now is we are about to unpreview QUIC APIs. So we went through the last round of looking at the API shape and if there is something we would like to change before we settle on the shape. And the only thing we thought about was changing complete writes to an async method, returning value task that would actually wait for the peer to act the receiving of the data. What complete writes does is basically it says to the peer, I'm stopping writing. This is the last data, or what I sent up until now. Those are the old data. And originally this was just void. And if you were interested in knowing that the data has been received by the other side, you would have to consume writes closed task that is exposed on QuickStream. And we think that it's better to make this method async and just return value task. That's instead of calling method and touching property returning task.
Is the task it's returning different than the existing writes completed property?
No, it will be finished at the same time.
Sorry, I mean, is it is the implementation of this literally end with return writes completed? So
no.
The general answer is the non-generic value task, according to what we wrote in the guidelines, and Tobe may have changed his mind here, but basically it's don't ever return non-generic value task unless you have to. So if you're implementing the I value task thingamabob, then you have to be value task, and otherwise you should just return task, because the non-generic completed task does not allocate. And if you're returning literally an already existing task, then you can also return that as task. And then you get to avoid all of the problems that come with using value task.
The task returned by the property does not get allocated until you ask for it, and this whole thing underneath is evalue task blah 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 implementation.
Right. So is it using I value task completion source, or is it just using a wait?
I value task completion blah blah. It uses manual reset value task source core or whatever that struct is called.
All right. I say boo, but if it is what it is. Sorry, I hate that we added that. It's what makes value task dangerous.
And why I wanted Stefan here for this, because this is used in Kestrel, and you are right now using the non-async version of complete writes. So this might bring some troubles to you. So I would like to hear your opinion on that.
And will we keep both?
Well, theoretically you could.
Wait, you could theoretically call both, or sorry, what?
Now keep both, like instead of removing the sync version and adding the async, we could have sync version that would not wait for anything and async version that would wait for.
Because it's like experimental, the idea is like we can delete APIs, or has it not like fully shipped, or what?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to cause a huge problem for Kestrel. Like, it's currently called from a sync method, but like go one level up and it's async and stuff. So I think should be fine.
If
I have no.
Yeah, why would you keep the rights completed property if you're getting rid of the method that builds it?
It's quite closed.
No,
I
completed
think
is what you wrote.
we
in
have.
I'm just going based on what you wrote
Sorry.
here.
Yeah. Sorry. That's mistake because it was really fast.
Like, if you wanted both
we-
patterns, that's fine. So that would be the leave the synchronous one and leave the property that you already had. But if you're deleting the synchronous method, then I'm just asking why aren't you deleting the property as well?
Because we also have the same thing for reads closed. Sorry, it's supposed to be closed, not completed. So we would have that like not balanced. You would have reads closed property and not writes closed property. And with the reads closed, there's no way around it. You have to have it.
Yeah, so I mean, if you say you want to add complete rights async as basically the equivalent of calling complete rights and then using the rights completed property, I think it's a fine addition. I don't know why you would need to delete the old one, especially if it's going to make read and write look asymmetric.
Okay, we can keep both. I also have like nothing against that.
It'll make ingestion like easier too, like, you know, when we take the runtime updates or whatever, dependency updates and ASP.NET Core.
Yeah.
Is it important that we update to this though? Like, is this like actually doing something asynchronously?
Like what we wanted to do, well, the original motivation for this was that, like, we got reported some perf issue in gRPC, and that was because if you go down through the HTTP stack has only dispose, but underneath it goes to QUIC stream, and calling synchronous dispose on QUIC stream is sync over async, and we cannot remove that because we have to wait for the full shutdown of both sides of the stream, otherwise we could lose the data. And this, we thought that we could use this complete writes async on the level of the last write to the stream instead of like blocking on the dispose async in synchronous dispose. So that's the motivation.
So it seems like this is actually avoiding a perf trap or like a sync over async trap in some cases.
Yeah.
In that case, like, even though it would complicate the dependency update, like system.net QUIC only ships as part of the shared framework, right? So it's not like we couldn't delete the old API if it's a perf trap.
We can also do it in stages, so we can add the new one, let you to consume it, and, you know, remove the old one before 9.0 ships.
Yeah. I
If,
mean, it's a small change, I think, for us to make, but that would be the lower risk thing, I guess. So it doesn't block dependency updates.
to me, it's really about, is there a real problem with your existing one that would make you delete it? Because our guidance is you should have synchronous things of all you should have synchronous versions of all asynchronous things. So Just
But in general, we never do for a QUIC that it's all asynchronous, so we don't have sync writes and things. So
fair enough.
Well, we
Same
do
for,
because
like-
or accepts or connects.
with the stream, we do have sync versions because we implement the stream, so we have to, but it's sync over async underneath.
Like in Kestrel, like we require you to like opt in to use synchronous stream APIs because in ASP.NET Core it will be sync over async, and then for protocols like HTTP2 at least it's unavoidable, and kind of effectively for HTTP3, though I guess it depends on how the native library implements it, but it's async, right? So.
All right. So, are we saying you do want to delete complete rights and the rights completed property?
Not the property. I want to keep the property.
Why?
I'm kind of there for consistency. Consistency. Who cares? It's not hard. But we should
Okay.
delete the perf trap.
It like it feels inconsistent for it to be there, given that it is already returned from the complete right. Like if you wanted to query the property, you should just call complete rights again.
Ooh.
Because all you can do, you're not a Boolean, you're just waiting on it. So the property makes no sense to me if you don't have the synchronous method.
Yeah, I don't care that strongly, to be honest.
Oh my god, I want to keep the property and the synchronous version rather than...
Okay, I'm like, it's just, you wanted to add this new thing as a value task, the property is a task. So it's either you want all three members or you want only one member. Those are the only two states that make sense to me. People can tell me I'm wrong, but...
So to be clear, will complete writes block when complete writes async would return an incomplete value task?
No. The complete writes just fires the action that eventually finishes the writes closed.
So that is misleading, right? Like if we keep both.
Yeah.
Like people would assume that the non-async suffix thing is going to block when the async suffix thing would have been truly async. Which is why we should just have async.
You've seen yourself, synchronous callbacks exist, and calling a sync thing when it's actually pure synchronous is better than forcing the caller to do sync over async.
I agree with that. It's just the naming's misleading then. Like, I'm not saying we should make the API, like, actually block.
Alright. How about this? I'm going to say we're approving deleting the property, we're approving deleting the method, and we're approving adding the new method. And whatever you feel like doing, you get to do. So
we get to do what subset we want? Beautiful.
That's awesome. I think we can sleep on it for another day or whatnot and coordinate with Kestrel that...
Yeah.
I know you like Robert's rules of order or whatever you like, but I like the idea. Like, I'm not sure if it's all related, but this feels like a line item veto from the product team.
Okay, Jeremy, I have one argument for why we should keep the property as well as complete writes async, because the property will give you just the task that will get eventually completed, but the complete writes async does an operation and then awaits the result of that operation. With the task, you can get to the task. With the property, you can get to a task without triggering the operation, which might be useful in some cases.
So
because, like, you have, yeah.
Can you read the property and grab that task and that task is, you can do whatever you do with tasks of, like, to say when this task finishes, go make this next task, and you can do that before people call complete writes?
Exactly.
Okay, then I guess it makes sense. I thought you said it was null until somebody called complete writes, at which point it made no sense to me to exist separately.
No, it gets, what I was trying to say is that it gets allocated on demand, so it's pay for play. If you don't ever call that task, that property, that task will never get allocated, and so it's cheaper to use the stream.
Okay, but if you've accessed the property,
Yeah.
then the later call to complete writes will attach to the same task.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then now I understand the value of the property.
You can check it without initiating it, and it does something worthwhile. All right. I do vote for deleting the sync method though, if we can, at some point. Or the not quite sync method, the fire and forget method, but not quite forget because the property exists.
I probably would as well, but I could see that we can defer the decision, and if we have approval for the deletion, we can finish the discussions and decide without bothering the API people again.
Sure, I mean, we got the line item veto, so yeah, but I'm okay with that.
Why is there no complete writes, complete reads?
Because you complete reading by reading till the end. You cannot just explicitly complete writes. Reads, sorry.
Wouldn't also disposing the stream?
If
You can reset the stream.
If you dispose the stream and you haven't read to the end of the stream, it will abort the reading side, letting the peer know that you haven't consumed all the data, therefore you don't have the complete picture.
Fair enough.
But logically, reads close is the same as writes close, just for the reading side, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then if the start the process of completing writes makes sense, chat suggests keeping the synchronous, or that if you're keeping the synchronous, that it would be begin complete writes or whatever. Then now we would have the well, okay, why is that void? And sure. So, right. The removal makes sense. The adding the new thing makes sense, and keeping the property makes sense. And if you want further changes, then we get to have a different discussion.
By the way, this is the last tiny thing in SystemNet QUIC, and by this we would like to announce that we are gonna unpreview SystemNet QUIC. So I remember last year I asked about it, and it was told to me that it's just tell mode. So this is me telling.
Sorry, what was the statement you made?
Unpreviewing, removing preview feature.
Unpreviewing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Cool.
you.
Congrats or condolences, because now you have customers.
And now you can't change things.
And we'll need to maintain it. Yeah, exactly. Last chance.
All right. 20 minutes.
I've got a couple that are going to be easy and fast. So they're 545.
Hey, only one of them says 4-5. You dropped out while saying the number.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So this one should be pretty straightforward. TimeSpan has basically, since .NET Framework 1.0, defined a bunch of internal constants. A few of them have been public just as long. These internal constants represent additional units that you can kind of compute from some of the existing ones, but which it's very convenient to actually have a named constant for. We use this extensively both in TimeSpan itself and in other of our own APIs, and there's been regular requests from users for us to expose them as well. And so it's basically just saying, let's expose those constants so that users have them, especially now that we've got new APIs that deal in things like microseconds and milliseconds more regularly. So it's just that the paired of APIs, there's hours per day, minutes per day, seconds per day, and then X per unit for each smaller measurement.
Seems fine to me. Is long the right type to use on all these?
Yeah, it's what we long is the base type for ticks, and it's what the existing constants are defined in terms of.
Sure, but the existing constants are probably doing big things. I'm just wondering at like hours per day. Like, I know if it's a literal,
we could make
it'll
make
type
them
convert it,
int
but yeah. So I'm just wondering,
we
should the
wanted
small
to.
ones be?
Yeah.
Should the ones that can be int because they'll up convert to long if you want, but long going down to int sometimes makes you cast.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. We can make the ones that are small enough to fit into int, and that would be fine.
All right, by my eyeballing your numbers, only these two needed to be long. If any more of them need to be,
Yeah, that looks correct.
then 15 minutes.
Yeah, so there's another easy one, which is 94384. If anyone else has easy ones, please feel free to say so. So this one is kind of just working towards parity for vector of t and vector 234. When they were originally exposed back in 2014, it had been opted at the time that they use constructors for a lot of the APIs. Constructors are worse for performance and composability, and so for vector 128, 256, 512, and others, we opted for named create APIs, which will also allow us to eventually have a common interface such as isymd vector that we're using internally, so that you can still create over the interface since interfaces can't define constructors. And so this is really just saying, let's provide a parity on the vector types by giving them named create methods that take in the values and the same overall shape, and the relevant as conversion APIs for the zero cost conversions between the types. That way you can continue to use them generically. We actually define all of these internally already for that purpose, and so it's really just making it public so that libraries like tensor primitives and other ones outside of the outside of Corelib can take advantage of it as well.
What makes the as vector 4 unsafe? Does it mean that components 3 and 4 are undefined?
Right. So the as vector 4 that just takes vector 2 explicitly makes the upper two values 0. The one that's unsafe leaves them undefined. which allows zero cost conversion when you don't care about the upper bits, which is common for many of the algorithms that you end up using. And so we use that extensively internally to provide additional performance. And we've got the same pattern for going from vector 128 to vector 256 or to vector 512. We've got the regular and then the unsafe suffixed variant for are the upper bits 0 or undefined.
Okay, and for vector of t, it looks like it is actually unconstrained generic, right?
Yeah, we changed it to be unconstrained in .NET 8. Stephen had championed that so we could use generics in more of the span APIs.
Right, but I mean, it's also not, like, in addition to there's no constraint on it, it's not only the primitive numeric types work, it's NET actually works here.
No, it works for any supported T. It will throw if the T is unsupported by the underlying vector type. So it's unconstrained so that it works in a context like a span of T index of, which is unconstrained.
Yeah.
But we have to have the type check of if vector of T is supported in there before we call into the API.
Right. So okay. So how many types are supported?
By vector of T.
Yeah. Is it a
like
finite set of types, or is it
12?
a composition limit?
Yeah, it's a finite set of 12 today, but we expand that as more T becomes supported. So it's all the integral types, which includes inint and inuint today. Float and double. In the future, that will expand to include half, bfloat. And so create just works for any supported T and doesn't need to be exploded because it's the XPlat API.
I'm just wondering if we can help guide as to what types are actually supported by, instead of making this generic, just exploding it to 12.
Well, but if you look at any
that's
other
what
vector API, there's a ton of
T dot
generic
is
APIs.
supported is for.
Yeah, there's a ton of APIs on vector already that are generic entities, and yeah, I haven't taken unconstrained generic because the type itself is just constrained to this somewhat random set of 20.
Okay.
Right, and so for the platform specific APIs, we explode it because those will never expand for a given instruction. For the XPlat APIs, we tend to take it generic and we tell users you have to check vector T is supported, which is a property we expose on the generic vector of T type.
Fair enough. If the constructor had never been public, if this was the only way that you could build it, then by just simply not having a create that wasn't a supported type, we would have simplified the pattern. Like, we would have said, these are the 12 types you can pass in. If you can figure out how to get a vector of string,
right,
good on you. But, like, you can't, so go away. And so with the creates, I think we've been more explodey than, like, you find out at runtime that you explode. So
that's the
issue is that it doesn't. And the other issue is that you need the generic version so that you can use it in generics. If you're vectorizing span of T index of, you have no clue what T is. You have to dynamically check, is T supported? And if it is, write generic vector code over the unknown T. And so you need the generic API so it can resolve.
Yep.
Fair enough.
That was the big discussion back then when we did vector of T, right? The whole point of this type was to have an abstraction that the platform can evolve.
Yeah, and Tanner, you said we already have this unsafe pattern for something else?
Sort of. We have Lord and store unsafe.
Yeah, we use unsafe as a suffix on a number of APIs. We've got for example, create scalar unsafe, which is used for create scalar and create scalar unsafe, where create scalar explicitly zeros the upper bits, create scalar unsafe leaves the upper bits undefined. We have
Chat just
as
asked, isn't it normally a prefix?
128 and as vector 128 unsafe.
Yeah. Chat just asked, isn't it normally a prefix instead of a suffix? But if we've already...
Yeah,
you've
not,
named
not
enough
for these
samples now.
APIs.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think we probably did so that they grouped together.
I think so,
Yeah.
and I think we have both, right? We have prefixes and suffixes.
Mm-hmm. So does 256 to 512 already exist? Or sorry, do you not need these on 256 and 512?
Yeah, so no, because you when you're operating with a vector of 2, 3, or 4, you're typically not going to ever operate them in terms of vector 256 or 512. If you really need to do that, you can do as vector 128 unsafe and then as vector 256 unsafe. So it becomes a two-step, but it's still zero cost. It's just not common enough to warrant having explicit APIs there.
You say so. That's it. I trust you. Not a dismissive.
So how are they zero cost? Because they're all intrinsics, or?
Yeah, they're intrinsic, and so the JIT basically internally specializes it to say, if this is already in a register, keep it in the register. I don't even need to move it to another register. I can consume it as is. Whereas the safe API will explicitly insert an instruction that zeros the data if it doesn't know it's deterministically zero already.
Oh man.
And I assume X, Y, Z, and W are names from the constructor parameters?
Yep, and those are the standard names for the fields as well.
Yep.
For
Just-
vector 2, 3, and 4.
Just making sure they were at parity.
Awesome. There's also 98346, which should be the last one that I've got tracked. That should be really simple.
Rejected.
So today we've got math.bigmul, which performs a big multiplication, and we provide that for we have a few different overloads. Normally they return a they have the out parameter, which returns the lower bits, and then the result, which returns the upper bits. But we also happen to have one for int that returns a long instead, which is incredibly convenient because the JIT can optimize it better. It works better with other algorithms. And internally, we actually have the equivalents for int for long returning int 128, returning ulong, and ulong returning uint 128. But we don't expose those publicly, and so the request is just let's actually expose those publicly. That way, other users can get the same perf advantages that we do.
So this is just the multiply to one
There
size higher?
is, yep. And then there is the additional scope there of we've been exposing new math APIs on the primitive types. So we have the option of only exposing these on the math types and on system.math and saying that because they're not part of the generic math interface, we don't need them on the primitive types. Or saying expose it on both, or going with what we've said in the past, which is that math and math are kind of soft deprecated, so new APIs are only on the primitive types. I don't have a strong preference for which there, but the proposal includes the full set for parity.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I thought we said we wanted all new things to go on the types and not on the math helper type.
Yep.
But
Yes.
I could see there being a difference of this one, of Big Mole's there and we're just squaring the circle.
Yeah, I was about to say, it seems like
Yeah.
it would be a disservice not to do that. One question I have is, so you said it's not part of the math interface. Should it be? Can it be?
It could be there because we can provide a dim for it. Providing big so let me correct that statement a little bit. This one in particular cannot be part of the generic math interface because we don't have a concept of associated types. So we can't say that for a given t number, it expands to a size t number times 2 in bit width effectively. We can provide something kind of like what div looks like, where we explicitly do the out or the tuple return instead. But that, I think, is a separate proposal, which needs to consider more about overall usability as well.
Oh yeah, because you need to split the types.
Yeah, you'd need an interface for math
Yeah.
that had T self and T bigger.
Or T smaller, right? Depending on viewpoint, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
so these are just specialty, non-generic. We understand bigger than a uint is a ulong, bigger than a ulong is a uint 128. And once you're multiplying two uint 128s,
Yep.
you get to do special things. So. Alright. And double checking. Yeah, they're all A and B.
Yeah, which is a bit unfortunate, but that's the name. We could fix the new ones that are on the primitive types to be left and right, and then just keep the ones on math consistent for consistency reasons as A and B.
I like that. Do we care about smaller than 32-bit?
Theoretically, someone could care about it, but it's not efficient to do it that way. There's no like performance optimization. You really want to do basically byte times byte as an integer, and then just downcast to U short. Well, and U short to int will already work because that one is C# already implicitly upcast to int for small type operations.
Yep. So there's just writing down that we said there's not need. So.
Yep.
I am pleased of my S to not U syntax. Oh, and the same question from chat of do we care about int 8 and int 16? So, and the same T bigger. Okay. And you can do partial structs in C#, but only one of them is allowed to declare fields. You can declare methods in other files. And trust me, I know. I've done this. Alright. I'll make myself happy and slap the word partial in all these to indicate we're modifying an existing type.
Yeah. This was a productive API review today.
This whole week was pretty productive.
Both in terms of blocking issues and some of the last minute, like, nice to have ones we can squeeze in for .NET 9.
Got another simple one if you're up for it.
Sure.
87689.
This will be the last
say
one.
5309.
That's where my brain went. So.
Yeah, so we have like starts with, ends with, overloads with for collections on span, or even overloads with string comparison, and string has starts with, ends with for a single char. So this is proposing that we add starts with and ends with for a single T element. Unlike most other things on span, this isn't really a perf thing. It would be just niceness for callers.
I did miss one. Thank you, chat. I even thought about saying, what are the odds that I get 6 replacements correct? And I made 7. The correct answer was 8. Alright. So span starts with span. I know we did a bunch of work for strings before. Did we, or for string likes before, did we miss this or did we intentionally leave it out?
I think it was missed. I don't know if Tanner remembers more.
Yeah, I know we discussed a lot of it. I'm not sure if this was missed or not. I know that there's just in the past that there's oddities with some of the APIs where when they take in a span, it can mean basically any of rather than this exact sequence.
Yeah, but that should be starts with any.
Should be, but I'm not positive we've done that in all of our APIs. I think starts with is fine here though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think trim's the main one that's weird like that.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, trim is one of the ones where params read-only span. People were like, but I can pass in a string literal here now.
Yep, and it deleted all of those characters, even when they weren't that whole word. Yeah, this seems fine. So we're specializing the char one to take a comparison type, and then the others are just ordinal value equality, or rather they're I-equatable value equality. And
Right.
why do we have, what's this group down here? Oh, we do have these.
That's the existing group.
So we're just adding so you only want to add the single T thing. So this is missing the string comparison, but we maybe don't care.
I don't think we have that for, we don't have that for string starts with system.char, because there's no, I actually don't know why we don't have it for that one.
Yeah,
because there is no comparison rules for a single char.
Right. Well, there is. If the span starts with two S's and you pass in the German SZ, then if you're doing ordinal, they're not the same, and if you're doing cultural sensitive, then they either are or might be the same. Since you can't actually start a thing with an S set, maybe that means it wouldn't have mattered under the cultural comparisons, but you could end with one. So ending with SS and ends with SZ would have a cultural comparison change, but they can turn the single into a span. We can add it later if people want.
Yeah, and we'd need to consider it for string at the same time.
Yeah, so chat does have an interesting question of why don't we just add params to the existing starts with?
Because it works as starts with this exact sequence.
Right.
And it might be confusing to users.
Fair enough.
And then with the one that takes the comparison at the end wouldn't be able to be paramsed.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But that one's that one's actually not relevant to our discussion, other than being like, wait, do we want the T that has the string comparison? Because we didn't add a T, string comparison. So the fact that we couldn't params it is, we have these on string. Or we have starts with somewhere that looks like that, where it's a single T.
Yeah, string has that.
String that starts with char. All right. Sure. All right. If Jan freaks out and says don't add it, then we won't add it, but the API shape looks sensible. And I don't know why Jan would freak out. I'm just saying. He sometimes has surprising opinions about memory extensions. So. And there you go, Germans. I call it scharf SS instead of SSET. You happy? Alright. So with that, we are over. And I'm sure that you can all hear that my sinuses are completely full. And I'm going to go lay down. So, thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our, let's stick with German words, blitz through a bunch of the backlog. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Redmond time, which I'm double checking. Yep, we don't have weird conflicts. So, see you on Tuesday at our same .NET time here on our same .NET channel. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you.